Hello, dear reader, and welcome to a video where I take you through my 2026 reading journal, which is designed to get me out of a reading slump and show you my favorite pages from my journals from 2021 through to 2025. So let's start with our journal flip through. Over the years, my journals have flip-flopped between practical and aesthetic, and 2021 was really the year of practicality. I liked how some of these were designed. Others I didn't love them aesthetically, but they always did the job. So I had pages that tracked the series I was reading. These pages I adored, and some of the pages I've shown you already I was not actually a big fan of. However, this page was my one extravagant page, and actually I think I want to recreate that, which is not what I had planned to do when I started this video. I did have some fun pages too, like the 23 before 2023, which I absolutely did not finish, and then a mid-year check-in and a Haruki Murakami spread. I loved these aesthetically, but they didn't really do anything for me functionally. Here's a look at how my monthly layouts looked. Again, aesthetics over functions. And while I loved how they looked, I found I wasn't using my journal daily until I merged aesthetics and functions with this spread. I really liked having a reason to open my journal every day, so I might recreate that spread. But in terms of this journal, my 2023 journal, the yearly spreads that you're seeing here now, none of them I really loved how they looked. They were not very good looking, so I think I overcompensated by making my monthly pages look really nice. But that's just a little brief overview into the first few years of my reading journal. Now, 2024 is tragic. Oh dear reader, my cat was sick over my 2024 journal, which was also my most expensive journal and a gift. This is all I have left of it. This was all I managed to save. But you can see that I had the aesthetics still going very strong, and I think that was sort of a problem of mine because I didn't really use this journal. I was starting to get a bit slumpy with my reading, which didn't help. But then we come on to 2025, which is what I like to call this year the peak of aesthetics and the lack of functionality. I really ramped up my aesthetics, and I love how all of these spreads look. However, I never used them. It was a mixture of a reading slump, a life slump, and just being busy, but none of these spreads worked for what I needed in the moment, and so this journal just got abandoned. And it is now actually the journal that I use for my career notes when I'm sitting in class and I need an empty journal to just write messy notes in. I love how some of these look, but they didn't function. So 2026, what do I want from this journal? This is the journal that I want to merge functionality and aesthetics. You can see here that I have started logging my reads all the way back from 2017. Bless Goodreads for having that information, and these old journals for having some of the more recent information, because I think it's just really cool to have this long list of all the books I've read in the last nearly 10 years. Like, that's wild. So that's a functionality thing for me. I think it will be so useful having that. So on to the more fun spreads. These are spreads that I'll use monthly, maybe for a week, just things to make my reading life a little more interesting. I decided not to go ahead with doing the series tracker straight away, and instead did a reading stats page, just like my old journal. I realized how much I loved this page and how it looked when I looked back on it, so I figured maybe this would motivate me to finish some books, and so I decided to recreate it. Color-wise, I think I'll be using a more muted palette, as that's more my style now, but overall it's very much the same. And then it's time to decide what to do next. So I figured it was time to do my series tracker because I was meant to do that first. My series tracker is super simple. It is literally just the title of the series and a tick for each book in the series I have read. I have just done enough in this to show you sort of an outline of how it can look if you wanted some inspo to copy. I definitely have more series that I'm in the middle of, but I think that would take me quite a while to go through and add them all. Now, in terms of the manga series, it's exactly the same, except for the fact that manga series tend to get quite long. So, what I've done is made rows of 10, and for each volume of a series that I read, I tick it off. For example, the second series I write in here is Attack on Titan, which has 43 current and finished volumes. So there are 43 spaces for me to tick off. That way, I know how many books I have to eventually buy. If I'm going to buy the whole series, my god, my wallet is crying. And I also know how far through the series I am, which is kind of nice. I did leave some extra space because I know that I have a lot of manga series I'm in the middle of and they're quite long, so I thought better safe than sorry. Now, moving on, I decided I wanted a little challenge for the end of the year, something to try and prompt me to read a bit more. So I created a little end of 2025 challenge, which is literally just reading the TBR books I'm in the middle of and trying to read one book a month that I'm reading because I want to, not reading for the numbers to just get my numbers up for the year, you know? I also created a 2025 wrap up page, which just features the best books I've read, the worst book I read, and the total books I read, which actually at the moment, I don't even know how many that is for this year. But let's move on. I decided that I really did like that monthly reading tracker, so I decided to recreate that by ripping out that picture of the Temple of Heaven that I took when I was in China and adding a picture from one of my favorite mangas, Jujutsu Kaisen, on the other side. I haven't labeled this with a month yet because I don't actually know what month I'm going to use this for, so I've just done 31 days to be safe. And each day that I read, I'll colour in a square, and that way I can see the progress over the month of maybe some of the longer books I've read, and it will just motivate me to actually pick this journal up daily, which is the main thing. So let's have a little flip through some of the funner spreads that you might want to copy. But maybe not the series tracker blank page. I don't think you're going to want to copy that. Now onto one of my favorite spreads, my TBR spread. I really love the aesthetic from my most recent journal, so I've decided to recreate this. But I don't love how I marked off books that I had read, the rating that I gave them. So I'll need to rethink that when I get there, but for now, that's not my problem. So I decided to keep with the same aesthetic using one of the same washi tapes, some of the same stickers, and then just list down all the books that are currently on my TBR. This fun fact is, when I made this TBR the first time, I had listed every book that I owned, and now, approximately 10 months later, I only own two more because of the amount of books I've read versus hauled, which I think is pretty good. So enjoy this little break featuring some new products I hauled, two new pens, and the new 2025 mild liner pack, which I'm actually obsessed with. And of course, I needed to restock on my favorite erasable highlighters before I decided that it was time to get back to showing you what I was actually doing in my journal. So let's flip through it all. This way, you guys can actually get an idea of what my journal is going to look like day in and day out. This time, I think it really is a mix of practical and aesthetics. I have spreads like my books read and my TBR that are really all about tracking, but they still meet that aesthetic that I like. So I'm not really compromising the need over the aesthetics. I've left space to continue on, and in the middle, I have all my fun spreads. So these are ones that I might not use frequently. They're ones that maybe aren't so functional because they're not ones that I need to look at every day, or they're not ones that I'll be tracking a year from now. But they're ones that kind of make me excited to read in the moment. And I think that's just as important. So I've definitely got two for 2025 because, spoiler alert, I do kind of need to use this journal right now. And I may use this spread in November, maybe December, or maybe January. And here is a glimpse at the final TBR list. From the start of 2025 to nearly the end of 2025, it has only increased by 2 books, which I am very proud of, I must say. But here's hoping that I can continue to get out of my reading slump and enjoy books again. Thank you, dear reader, for watching.